We are live.
Awesome.
Woo!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, creatures of the night, we are back here again. My name is Chris, but you can call me Moon, and I have two very special guests with me tonight. These two folks have been huge supporters of me since the very beginning of my YouTube horror journey, and I wanted to invite them on because they have some interesting opinions about this movie. So before we begin, let's go ahead and...
The following program contains coarse language, a lot like real life. Viewer discretion is advised.
Alright, so there's our warning out of the way, and I want to...
Replay.
Want to give a shout out to Hobbs Horror for commenting on the replay of last week's stream. Thanks, Hobbs, for your support. Alright, guys, so Friday the 13th, 1980.
Yes.
Yeah.
The classic question mark.
Okay, so I guess we better just tackle this elephant in the room right here, this big, giant, pink elephant. Okay, there are some good things about this movie. Betsy Palmer. Oh, there is one other thing, though. There is one other thing that's really awesome, and it's huge. It's like probably even bigger than Betsy Palmer. It is Kevin Bacon's huge penis. There is a shot, and I don't know how I missed it, but when we were...
He is very well endowed in this
Oh
film.
my God, that bacon is just, that was a fun little piggy.
It's sizzling. It's sizzling, yeah. It is weird. It's weird I never noticed it considering how much focus it gets on the camera.
Yeah,
But
so for my positives, it's Kevin Bacon's bacon and Betsy Palmer, who, fun fact, and I'm sure you know this, Moon, she pretty much did this so she could get a car.
Yep.
To make, yeah.
Yeah, she, the last interview with her I saw was just like a year or two before she passed, and she said that they had offered the script to a whole bunch of people from her generation, and she looked at it and she thought, there's no way. And she was driving home like 2 days later, and her car blew up. She blew the engine up in it anyway. The car itself didn't blow up. But, so she contacted them and said, look, I need $1,000 or something like that for me, and buy me this car. And she told them exactly what she wanted, and they said, done.
Wow.
And she said, really? They said, yeah. She said, well, at least the script's a piece of shit. Nobody will ever see it, so it won't matter.
words to live.
It took her a long time to come around to the fact that people loved the movie and loved her.
Yeah. I know she did sort of embrace it toward the end, though.
Yeah, which
she
is
did.
actually really kind of sweet to see, like, her kind of doing that and just embracing, like, you know what, sure, I think it's a piece of shit, but cool you guys like it and like me for it.
And money.
And money.
Yeah, a lot of people, or she said a lot of people, when she started doing the convention circuits and stuff, would come up to her and, you know, tell her about their struggles raising kids and how much she may have been a psychopath, but she loved her kids, or loved her kids so much that she would go to that kind of an extreme. And I think you froze up.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry about
Sorry
that.
about that. Okay, we're okay now.
Okay, but you know that telling her how much they loved the fact that she was that dedicated as a mother.
Yeah. Oh, that is like a beautiful thing.
It is kind of fun because, like, Mrs. Voorhees, like, all the sort of nitpicks and issues I do have with this film, Pamela is the really interesting part, and there's a lot to analyze and talk about with her character. I actually do really, there's one saving grace for this film, all jokes aside. I do feel like it is Betsy Palmer and the character of Pamela. I like the idea. There is some kind of questionable executions of, like, how can this, like, kind of, like, woman in her like, mid-50s, like, shove a spear through an entire bed and human neck and stuff you can poke out. But, like, For what it is, I still feel like they actually have a really good idea with her. I like her. She's a very sympathetic character in a way. Like, yeah, she's going around killing people who had nothing to do with it, but it's a psychosis for her. She lost it. She lost everything mentally after she lost Jason, and she's just been kind of crackers ever since.
Yeah, and
reopened and kind of started that up again.
It definitely escalated it. And one thing I like about Betsy Palmer and her performance is it hints like when she's given the backstory, she's like, she was making dinner and she was making meals for the camp, and she doesn't have a husband. She has a special needs child, and it's back in a time where you had even less options, even if you had money, but she didn't. And so she had to basically to pay the bills and take care of her kid. Her kid had to be kind of put in a questionable situation and stuff with these little snot-nosed horny teenagers. So that she has a lot of guilt. What this is basically implying is she has so much guilt.
Yeah.
And I really love that's pretty deep. Like as paper thin as some of the script is, this is the part that actually has a lot of stuff that you want.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I really like her. My only kill that I can't, through my own headcanon, kind of justify is the spear from under the bed.
Yeah, I don't know how she does it.
Well, I think it's supposed to be just an arrow, but when they show the up close on it, that's a really thick, arrow. So,
she's just.
It is a little odd that she was able to just and how did she get enough force to drive it through with how close to the floor she was?
Yeah.
If a bug head or something, maybe sure, but the fact that she's right up against the floor, you just kind of
I don't know. Sometimes I've been super angry where I just want to, and you can have a lot of force.
And she's doing it one-handed because she's holding Kevin Bacon with the other, so she's doing it one-handed.
Yeah, that's the leverage on it.
One hand though, guys. Women are great with just one hand. Give us one hand and we can
And the first innuendo of the night.
Alas. But no, I think if you are in that kind of rage, you'd be surprised when you're man or woman.
I suppose. I just feel like the logistics are not thought out to that. But it's a cool and it's very much probably the most iconic kill of the film, so it definitely paid off.
Yeah, there's a I can't remember who told it, if it was Savini or his assistant was talking about it, but the blood that they used for that scene was a little bit thicker than what it normally is. It had sat uncovered, so when they hit the syringe for it to pump it up the straw, it jammed. It was too thick to go through, so he just unplugged it from the big turkey baster size syringe and blew through it. That's why you get that little slow drip at the beginning and then the squirt, and then it kind of puddles. And I can't remember if it was Tasso or if it was Savini who was under the bed and was talking about it.
Still, it's a hell of a good idea.
It's a good idea. Savini's career is full of that stuff, and it just shows even this relatively early on in his career, you can see the effects really are cut above the rest of a lot of the slasher films that were very much influenced by Halloween that came out around the same time as Friday the 13th.
I would agree with you on that a little bit, but that just kind of shows the genius of Savini.
Absolutely.
I think his effects in this one are really solid. Sorry. But I think that some of his other works are
more iconic,
are more intense than this one, but I like the simplicity of this one. I think it has a charm to it that some of his more over the top, more gory stuff has later on.
I get that. There is sometimes less is more.
Yeah,
and this movie certainly does that.
This one, it's in a way of it's a lot. He had a little bit less money to work with, and he was a little bit more green around the gills when doing it, as opposed to some of his later films. You compare this even when he came back to the franchise, The Final Chapter, you can see definitely the evolution in his style, but there still is a lot of charm to these that I can definitely see being more memorable as opposed to like some of his more high profile effects he had done.
Oh, well, I always say sometimes they won't, it'll hinder and hurt you, but if you have those talented people, I think sometimes it can be a blessing that you're boxed in with either financial constraints or other constraints, because you really do have to think outside the box, and he does that. And I think it's actually helped, but you should have to still have a lot of passion for it.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, I really like his effects in this one. Now, here's one that I know that we kind of disagree on, and that is the cast and the characters. My thing with the characters is that in this one, at least they feel more real in a lot of ways. Ned is annoying.
Yes.
But I know someone who's fairly similar to that. I know people who are, or have known, over the years, people who were similar in personality to the other people, to the would-be counselors. And I like the fact that it kind of goes the good girl Halloween trope with Alice, but not exactly, because if you pay attention, she's participating in the strip monopoly. She's smoking weed while she's doing it. They're drinking beer while doing it. She's obviously been sleeping with Steve, or at least it comes that way. Comes off that way to me. I've heard other people say that it was she wasn't sleeping with him and he wanted her to, but for me, I don't read it that way. You're not going just the way that they give that dialogue.
Yeah, I also kind of read them as like having at least like hooked up once. They may not have been like together or not. They at least hooked up at some point. I feel there's a bit of a past with the two of them. I feel.
I can see how you guys are thinking of that, and that's probably more what they were going for. But I kind of you could take that one scene where they're talking outside the cabin and she's kind of threatening to leave. You could wonder that he made a really strong pass at her and she was like, "Whoa, dude." You could take it that way. Now, I'm not saying you guys are wrong, but I kind of take it more that way because it's just the good girl trope. But maybe I'm
I
wrong.
can see that, but Moon is right. Like I do, admittedly, even I'm at fault of doing this a few times, of like chopping Alice into the likes of like the more like stereotypical final girls we would see in slasher films to come that were very, very heavily influenced from the likes of Laurie Strode, as opposed to like Sally Hardesty or like the Black Christmas girls. Were like, yeah, they were a little bit more puritanical than say some of the other characters in the movie, but they still were like very sex positive people and like did drugs and everything. Whereas Alice is kind of a nice middle ground before. She dresses a little bit more modesty, is a little bit less overt in her sexuality, but she's still like, like we said, she'll still play a game of strip monopoly, however the fuck that works, and she will like smoke weed and drink and all that stuff too.
And she doesn't give moral objections to the ones that
absolutely. She's not like a Laurie Strode type where she's a little bit like goody puritanical.
I get that. I don't have too much of a problem with Alice. It's
Alice. She's
the other.
Alice is my favorite of the counselors.
Yeah, I get that. What about I can't say that because Kevin Bacon and his big bacon.
I like Kevin Bacon, but I think it's just because it's Kevin Bacon.
It is. It's totally.
Yeah.
I feel like it's example of that.
Because he's not particularly memorable if we're being
He's
fair.
just he's one of the guys. He has a girlfriend. They have sex a lot. There's not much else to him other than the fact that he's played by Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Crazy Ralph, although.
I do like Crazy Ralph.
Yes.
I enjoy Ralph. But it's always weird to me rewatching this film after it's been a while. I always think there's way more Ralph in the movie than there actually is, because he's really only in the film 2 scenes.
Yeah, but they're good.
They're good memorable scenes, but I always think he's in more of the movie.
Yeah, that's kind of one of my issues is that, I wish he was in it a little more.
I can see. Would you preferred if maybe they lumped in like some of the stuff they do with him in part 2 into this film?
Yeah, I do. I would be, because we watched this movie and you kind of forget, like, there isn't, until we really get to the Betsy Palmer stuff, there's not a lot of story. And I'm not being a dick when I say that, no hate to anyone who loves this film, but there's really not that much story till we get to Betsy Palmer.
It's a lot of like what would become the standard of slasher films. Big grandiose kill. Now fought for about 15 minutes. Another kill, rinse, recycle, climax of the movie. It's very what would become the standard. But for the time, considering how early in the genre this was, yeah, it's a little basic comparing it to stuff that would come after. But looking at the stuff it was contemporary with, it's not as bad as like some of the weaker straight-to-video slashers of the 80s, I feel. They're at least egregious of those problems.
That's true. It's just my issue is that so many people, really talk up about part 1, and I think they're just, in this franchise, there's way better movies.
Mm-hmm.
And no hate, again, no hate, but that's just my own personal opinion.
Oh, like I said, I see that there are some serious issues with this. There's, unless you really, if you just sit and watch it on its surface level, there are plot holes big enough to drive a truck through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you dig deeper into some possibilities and some fan theories, including a couple of my own, some of those close up, but it's still, it's still a product of its era, and it's my favorite, but I understand that it's problematic, and also my love for it is nostalgia because I was 8 or 9 or so the first time that I saw it. It was one of the very first horror movies that I saw that can be classified as truly a horror movie. Now, I was born in the early 70s, so I grew up with Jaws, Close Encounters, the Spielberg stuff like that. Of course, the other 70s stuff, The Car, that was on TV, that kind of thing. So, I had that before it. And then actually I saw Friday the 13th as a double feature with another movie. Watched both of them together in one night. Was staying at my grandmother's house, and they had, I want to say Showtime, but it may have been HBO. I can't remember. At home, we only had 3 channels, but at my grandmother's house, they had 28 or 30, something like that, and one of them was that, and I watched Death Race 2000, and then the cable TV premiere of Friday the 13th.
That is a really good double feature.
It's a really interesting double feature looking back at it.
It makes sense, though. It does.
I liked it.
And to this day, I absolutely adore both movies.
Yeah.
I can totally see that, and I definitely, we were talking about this a little bit back then. I also, while this isn't a movie I have a whole lot of love for, I can totally acknowledge and see where you're coming from, because I have tons of movies like that,
everyone does.
I will vehemently defend the original Tremors for being a legitimate good movie. There are loads of problems with the other 3 original sequels, though. But I have a lot of fondness and memories associated with watching those as a kid. I used to watch them all the time when Sci-Fi played them on. I always made a thing out of it. So I cut those movies equally amounts of slack, even though they're not the greatest, but will I still say that Tremors 2 Aftershocks is one of the greatest sequels of all time? Absolutely. And I'm sure you have some movies like that as well.
Slumber Party Massacre 2.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of narrative issues, but I fucking love that.
We have these fond memories you can't
Yeah.
separate from the piece.
Yeah, and that's what makes movies so magical, is it captures a time and a place.
How old were you when you first saw the original Friday? Oh, this wasn't your first one.
No, this wasn't my first one. I saw them out of order. I think I was about 9 or 10ish when I saw it. The USA Network played these a lot, and Groovy Movies, and while Mike did it. And I know I probably saw it there because I didn't get to see. The one I got to see in the theater was Part 6. Yeah, I got to see that one in the theater, but I did because I'm not that old.
I think weirdly my first one was Part 3, just randomly being played on AMC during Beer Fest one year. I think I started with Part 3.
That's a strange.
It's a really weird one to start with, yeah.
3 is so bland. It's so dead center, middle of the road. The characters are okay. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're forgettable. The kills, except for the handstand, are okay, but kind of forgettable.
Yeah.
The final girl is okay, but kind of forgettable.
You know, I think you just hit the nail on the head. 3 is kind of how I feel as for how you feel about this film. Like, it's good. There's some cool kills. Kevin Bacon getting speared is great and stuff, and I love the final conflict. Alice is a solid final girl, but like the characters are fine. But besides the fact that one of them is played by baby Kevin Bacon, they never stand out in it. I think that's kind of insufferable. But I do feel like that's kind of exactly how I feel about this movie. It's fine, but for me, a lot of it does come down to being a little bit forgettable, honestly.
See,
I feel like maybe if I watched this one before I watched any of the others, I might feel more similar to you, Moon.
See, I don't have that problem like guys because I got it. My favorite in the franchise is a cool movie that nobody can dispute. Mine is Part 7.
Ah, the classic.
So see, no issues there. Screw you all. Jason versus Bargain Bin Gary is a fucking classic. I don't care when I will go to the mat with this.
I'll defend Part 7, but I don't know if I go that far.
It is. It's awesome. The pearls.
The first 2 acts of Part 7, I kind of zone out for. The final fight, okay, that one, that is up there. It's up there with this one, honestly, for the final confrontation.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Yeah, 7, 6, and this one probably not my favorite final confrontations, honestly.
And fuck you all, I love Roy Burns. I don't care. I don't
You just
care.
had to get that one in there.
Yeah, I do. I like Roy Burns, damn it.
I do too. It's actually like 4th on my list, or 5th, somewhere in that neighborhood. So yeah.
And I love the kid. Just forget it, Rick. Just forget it. I love the scene too, and it's nothing, well, it's graphic, but it isn't because you hear him screaming and then you see those white crisp sheets and you know someone's just throwing red paint on these sheets. But it's so fucking cool.
It's really cool. Were we talking about the first film?
Yeah, we'll get back to that. Sorry.
That's alright. That's alright. We got plenty of time. Now one of the characters in it, actually 2 characters in this one that I genuinely like and don't get enough credit for. They're not the most memorable, but they're very real to me. And that's both of the girls. I'm not a fan of the Annie character, however.
Really?
I'm really not.
He's kind of a nothing. I can see that.
I suppose so. She doesn't bother me, but I can kind of see where you're coming
It's
from.
kind of the conversation that she has in the vehicles is what bugs me about Annie. When she's in the truck with Enos, and that's another character like Crazy Ralph that I genuinely love in this movie, is the truck driver.
Yeah.
But when she's in there with him, she's talking, just all the different things on it. And then when she gets in the Jeep, which, we find out, spoiler alert, is Mrs. Voorhees and not Steve Christie, she's talking about, I hate when they call them kids. It sounds like they're a bunch of goats. They're not, she goes from being this average person to all of a sudden this dippy hippie dialogue.
Yeah, I know I never noticed it, but yeah, that's actually a really good point. She does kind of suddenly change change how she acts. Like, I guess you could argue maybe because she was interacting with a guy in the first time, and then in the other one she's interacting with an older woman, so maybe, but it's still, that's a loose argument, I acknowledge.
Yeah.
How quickly she jumps out of the.
It is cool that, like, instantly she sees, like, wait, that's not the camp. Wait, why are you speaking about this? I'm out.
Yeah.
She gets the feeling. She's hitchhiked a lot, and this might not be the first time she's had to do that.
Which is a nice touch, and there is sometimes some subtleties in this.
I also, like, one kind of interesting thing I find about Annie a little bit is I wonder if they were kind of trying to do a bit of a psycho thing of, like, introducing her as, like, here's like your main character of the movie, everyone, and then she gets killed off in the first 20 minutes. I always wondered if they were trying to do a bit of a psycho.
I often wonder that too. I don't know. I've never read anything that's confirmed that.
I haven't either.
That's the feeling that I've always gotten with it. That's one of the reasons that when people talk about this one being, calling it a carbon copy of Halloween, it's like, no, wait, there's a whole lot of psycho in this one. You have the girl who's introduced who looks like she's going to be the final girl. You got that little sweetness to her when she walks up to the dog outside, and then you kill her off in 20 minutes, and then, of course, at the end of it, it's mommy issues as the...
Yeah, there is a lot of parallels to Psycho.
Yeah, instead of a son because of the relationship with his dead mother, it's a mother because of her relationship with her dead son. Yeah, you're right, actually. I never thought about it. I always just thought of anything. Yeah, there is a lot of Psycho in this movie's DNA.
There is a lot of Psycho. Also, I love, this isn't anything Psycho, but I do love how we get the reveal of her body in the Jeep later on.
Towards the very end when Alice is running into it.
I just love that. I like how she's all bloodied up and kind of starting to decompose a bit.
A little bit, and she's a little bit waterlogged because of how much rain they've been getting and stuff.
Yeah, I just like that.
Yeah, I like that bit too, because it means that Mrs. Voorhees has been driving around for the last 2 days with a dead body sitting up in the front seat.
That's a vibe.
I feel like at some point she put sunglasses or something on.
I kind of always have this head canon she talks to her the whole time, like normal, like
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, that's how I feel like how she was talking to Alice before Crazy.
That would be kind of interesting to see, like a little, like an internet short, like a little short film, like Mrs. Voorhees, when she's off screen, like setting up the traps and stuff. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, is she crazy or is she Mrs. Voorhees?
That would be kind of a little short film to see.
Yeah, actually.
That'd be something for Womp Stomp to do.
Yeah. Idea.
We're going to be getting that pretty soon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but the other two girls that are in the movie, I really like both of them. They both have they both seem to be fun people and have good personalities. You don't get a whole lot out of crap, I can't remember her name. The one that's with Kevin Bacon.
I don't remember her name either. I just refer to her as Kevin Bacon's girlfriend.
Yeah.
But you do get the scene in the bathroom where she's doing the impression, and and of course her kill is the axe to the head.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
It's a pretty fun kill.
It's not a bad kill. She kind of is a character, the fact that none of us can remember her name.
She might be one of the more egregious cases of she's there for the body count a little bit.
Which I don't think is bad.
No, that's not a bad thing inherently. As long as you have at least one or two really good, interesting characters. They don't even necessarily have to be the final girl or anything. But just having a couple interesting characters sprinkled out in your slasher film, I'm totally fine with just having a couple nothing characters or characters that just rely on like one personality trait just to fill out a body count. That's totally fine as long as you have at least one or two interesting ones to me.
Yeah.
And that's where I was kind of going with the other one, who's Marcy, who, by the way, fuck cancer. She was actually quite a good actress. I really liked her in this. I really thought she did a good job. I really I know it was 1980, but dear God, the nightgown that they gave that poor girl, it looked like something that they stole off of Grandma.
That was kind of the thing back then.
I wasn't there, and I wasn't looked. Like I can't speak for it, but I guess.
Like we had, the little girls had pretty much the same thing.
We're all going around dressing like it's Little House on the Prairie.
Kind of, except unless you had cool parents like mine that would have like the matching nightgown for your doll. They had like that. That was a thing at Christmas. That was a big thing. But yeah, then you never got, even then though, we did, yeah.
Yeah, she is a little bit more like frumpy, ye olden times looking, even for that.
Yeah, and she was just running around in nothing but her underwear and a raincoat 5 minutes before that.
Yeah.
That was nice. I like the rain.
I love how movie raining it is in this film. Like, it's just obviously just a rain machine just pouring down, dredging. Like, this is thinking like almost going to turn into like a hurricane or a tsunami levels of like rain coming down. But it builds a really good atmosphere. It sort of reminds me of like an old murder mystery. Old Dark House is kind of what I think of, like just this ungodly, unrealistic amount of rain coming down, keeping these characters locked into this secluded location.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, it's all about the atmosphere. It kind of, especially if you're in this camp, there's something kind of, it kind of makes you go up, like the creepiness factor goes up.
There's a crazy town man who's hiding in your pantries going on about how the place has a death curse, for how many people died there.
Fucking snakes get in your cabin. Ugh! That's the one scene that always makes me jump, though. The goddamn snakes.
Poor guy.
My only problem with that scene is the fact that they actually killed it.
Yeah, we did the kind of cannibal Holocaust route.
Yeah, it's low budget filmmaking, but I still feel like you could have asked Tom Savini to throw up a little bit of extra latex and make one over lunch or something.
Yeah. But I mean, I like the way that they call to Marcy, and she goes out, looking for she hears the child's voice. She goes out. She actually is enough of a person not to just ignore it and go looking for this lost child.
Yeah.
And of course, it is an off-screen kill with the arrow, but
it's okay.
It's not bad.
It's not bad. And like they do create a lot of atmosphere because you can see. I mean, it's pouring rain. She's getting drenched.
Like you said, a lot. The distant child screaming somewhere, but you can't exactly figure out where.
Yeah, and that really it is. I'm sure guys would feel it too, but like as a woman, it's just something built into most of us where you're like
maternal instincts kicking in.
Yeah. You hear something, you're gonna go and try to figure out what the fuck.
Yeah. You hear a child's voice going, "Help me," I think the guys would have probably been more like, is that real? Is that just the wind? Is that something making noise?
It's cold and wet out there. It ain't my kids.
You're playing stripping out.
Yeah, exactly.
That works.
I mean, it sucks for the kid, but this is really not my problem.
I'm not on duty for 2 more weeks. I'm just helping.
I'm not getting paid for this.
Yeah, I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting paid to protect kids for 2 weeks. So back to the game.
Yeah. I mean,
it's awesome.
It's both. I always find it so weird. Like, why strip Monopoly? It's one of those real eccentricities of this movie. I was like, could have just easily done strip poker and it would have made more sense. But I respect the fact they're like, no, it's just a little different out of the box.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have never looked, but I'm sure that there are. If you search the internet, there are the rules for it. But
yeah. I mean, what? I like to be thorough.
But it's one of those things that it's a movie that I love, and I know people are going to give me shit for it because I got thumbs down for the last video because I talked crap about Halloween. So talking bad about that one and good about this one, I'm sure I'm going to get at least 1 or 2 out of it. But everybody has their own opinions on stuff, and I fully acknowledge that it's nostalgia for me on this one. I was much later getting to Halloween, so this one is just my thing. This one is, out of the big 4, this one is my number 2, behind TCM. And I love the way that they do the atmosphere in it. I like the slow burn in this one. It's not normally my thing, but again, it's probably nostalgia more than anything else. I don't think there was a need to watch her make coffee. And Ralph hiding in the closet, you know.
I always find it funny, like, how did he get there so quickly on the bike and stuff? I find
because he was a messenger of God, so you're gonna follow. If God tells you to do something.
Or is it secretly like the remake and there's tunnels in Mount Crystal Lake and Ralph's the only person who knows about them or something to get around, like something like that? The only legitimate criticism I would say for this movie is, like, I do feel like there are a few instances of padding stuff, and there are some downright stuff. We did not need to have any of these things. I don't care about any of the stuff of, like, at the diner and all that stuff. It could be kind of interesting character interactions, but I don't care about, like, Steve at the diner and, like, getting coffee, and then him getting a flat tire, and then him getting picked up by a cop, and then all that. Like, this whole movie, it's always funny to me. We're building up like, oh man, he's gonna come to the camp and save the girls and stuff, and then as soon as he gets to the camp, he's instantly killed and does absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It was sort of funny that we devote so much time in this movie to, like, building up, like, okay, where is he right now? What's he doing?
Subverting our expectations?
It's a Poochie situation. Like, if Steve isn't on screen right now, the audience should be going, where's Steve?
Well, it's to set up the red herring angle.
I guess, yeah.
Because, you know, budget constraints meant that they only had enough money for one Jeep. So story-wise, you have Mrs. Voorhees and Steve who have the exact same Jeep. In the exact same color, you know. So it's set up as the red herring. You're supposed to think, you know, Steve left and then all of this stuff started. It's got to be him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you show him at the diner, and one of the things that cracks me up, and I didn't notice it until a few years ago, was when the deputy picks up, or the sheriff, I guess, I'm not sure, picks up Steve and is driving him back. He mentions that Crazy Ralph's wife is worried about him. He's been out all day. Crazy Ralph is married.
I always recognize the fact that scene of, like, yeah, she does mention it as well. But yeah, you're right. Crazy Ralph is married. That's what I want. Like, why don't we have a scene of, like, in one of the sequels after Ralph died or something, get her go crazy because Ralph got killed. So she's set out to, like, warn people of the dangers of Camp Crystal Lake and stuff. That could have been kind of an interesting thing for, like, part 3 or something.
I feel like it would have been working with Roy Bird somehow. I don't know why. That would work.
What, she's like the crazy mountain lady in part 2?
Yeah. Which I love that fucking crazy mountain.
What is it, Junior?
Junior!
Yeah.
Ethel and Junior in 5, yeah. Love
them. So you think that Junior's secretly like Ralph Jr.? Crazy Ralph Jr.?
You tell him, Ma!
Okay, why not? My new headcanon, that's secretly Crazy Ralph's wife, and Junior is Ralph Jr.
I think you could do some stuff.
Okay, sure, I headcanon.
He's a little old, but, you know, hey, love is love, right?
That's what I tell Marty.
The climax of this one. It's another one of those cases where they were trying so hard to make it real that there's a whole lot of that fight sequence that is padding and is gotta just want somebody to do something.
You brought that up when we were watching it because when Alice is piling up the door.
Yeah, like right before, I love the bit where right before Mrs. Voorhees' proper introduction, Alice is like barricading the door. She like ties the rope around it. And then she just starts piling more and more chairs on it. And we see her do this whole thing. And then as soon as she sees the Jeep outside, she just rips all this stuff off, making that entire like 30 seconds completely pointless.
Why?
Why'd you do that? You could have just easily had her tie the rope around the door and move on with the movie. But no, we're going to have her pile like 6 chairs there too.
Well, where's Mrs. Voorhees is stalking her across the kitchen, and she throws the box of Kleenex and the baking soda, and it's like, you know, grab something with a little bit of weight to it. That is not going to do anything.
And you're throwing boxes, remember?
It's kind of a recreation of where you're done with the POV angle. I always assumed it was like a recreation of like the opening, the very opening kill scene. But it is a bit weird because she's throwing the candles and stuff. Like at least they were throwing like boxes. At least like they were in like an attic where there wasn't a lot of stuff. Like she could have grabbed like some cans of like food or something and just yeeted it in her own lady had her. That's something. You could have done something there, Alice. I always forget about that entire sequence in like the pantry and the kitchen. I always forget about it whenever I watch this movie. Always kind of like, oh right, there's more to this thing. 'Cause I always like kind of Mandela effected, like, okay, you have the initial scene of like her, like Miss Voorhees revealed, kill her mommy, kill her. Alice hits her with the poker, and then Miss Voorhees chases her down to the lake. I always forget about the bit in the pantry.
But
Yeah.
well, it wasn't executed perfectly. I think it does set a template for other movies to come and do it really
very
well.
much so. Is it a slight retread of like the closet scene in the original Halloween? Sure,
A little bit, but
I'll-
I like the fact it's a bigger, like the closet in the
Bigger
Halloween.
space.
Yeah, there's something that's actually more scary than the claustrophobic. You think it'd be the claustrophobic, but I actually like that it's kind of big.
She has enough room to move around, but there's still nowhere to escape to.
Yeah. But like I really do feel it's like a template.
Mm-hmm.
One problem with the closet scene that I have is the Foley on it. When she hits her in the head with the pan, that is straight out of the Three Stooges. Boom!
Yes.
It just kills any atmosphere in that one for me. It just cracks me up every time. And it didn't the first times when I was much younger, but it's one of those things that was one of the very early issues that I had with it, is that completely destroys that. And unfortunately it sets a tone. Well, I mean, you wouldn't have the endings that you have, but it does set a tone for they're down, you've got a weapon, you drop the weapon and run.
Yeah.
Yes. That is my biggest pet peeve in any horror movie, slashers, or especially Green, is that like you have the killer or like the person stalking you dead to rights, they're like knocked out on the floor or something, their head's completely vulnerable, and you don't just think, I'm gonna step on them a lot, or like crush their windpipe or something, like stab them in their, like at least go and cut their Achilles tendon so they can't chase you or something. Like that's one of the things when we were watching Jordan Peele's Get Out. I was so ecstatic when they actually do that at one point in the movie, of like him stomping the dude who was killing so he doesn't have to do it anymore. It's like finally somebody else actually thought of this.
They do it in You're Next too.
They do, you're right.
She hits it the one time, she stops, she looks at him, she kind of drops the bat down, or the sledgehammer axe thing, whatever it was. I think it was that sledgehammer. And then she picks it back up and says, about 4 more times, you know.
Yep. And you're right. You're right. I kind of like You're Next for a while. Yeah, you're right. They do that there too.
But it's something that should be done more.
It should be done way more frequently. Like at least I can give it a pass in the original Halloween, at least, because like she stabbed him. Most people in this high stress situation, you stab a guy in the heart a couple times, you assume he's dead.
Yeah.
Like maybe she should have gotten out. I maybe would have gotten out of the house instead of lilting in the door frame for a while. But she's in a high stress scenario, I can understand. But like, you just hit this old lady in the head with a frying pan. You hit her way harder with like the fire poker earlier, and she's up and running.
But see,
Yeah.
the thing is, she's not an old lady. She was like in her late 40s. I know
And
it
she would have been in her 40s, like in actual life. Like I feel like logistically, she would have had Pamela would have to be like at least in her mid 50s.
Is that old?
Well, I mean, like she's still compared to like this spry young 20-year-old and stuff. Like,
I suppose.
it is a bit weird.
I suppose. A lot of people do bring up that about her throwing the body in the window.
Oh yeah, where she just tosses it. Like I guess you could argue she like used the
Adrenaline?
No, I was gonna argue because the thing's up on a chain, so I always assume like she had it geared up on a tree, yeeted it out the window, and just like the branch it was hanging on broke or something while she was falling. I kind of had that instead of her just literally taking the body and just chucking it out at the window, but maybe that's how it worked too.
Admit you, who knows? It's fun
Yeah,
to think about.
That's one of those things that I've got a couple of of theories on that one. That's one that I kind of go to is the block and chain, or the block and pulley, where she had him strung up outside. So that one, the old lady can handle that one. And I say old, but yeah, she was probably in her early 50s, and it feels old in the mornings, but it's not really that old. But the one with the guy on the door, when Alice opens the door and crap.
I don't remember his name either.
I'm trying to think.
Bing Crosby's son.
Yeah.
I can remember his real name and who his dad is, but I can't remember that.
Yeah,
and I just
it's a Kevin Bacon situation. I do not remember that character's name at all.
And we just watched it.
Yeah.
I watched it Monday morning when I got home from work. But he's picked up and hung on the door. That one's a little bit harder for an old lady or for a middle-aged lady to do by herself. But there's also the thing that the body comes through the door. You hear the bang. That body's pinned to the body comes through the window, and then she opens it up, and that body's pinned to it. And then 3 minutes later, she drives up in the Jeep.
Yeah.
So there's that one, but my idea on that one is, I think that Jason was still alive and helping her.
Okay.
I think that in her mind, she was giving him the voice because he was unable to speak. So if he's mute and she was already kind of loopy to begin with, she's now speaking for him. So if she's been doing that for the last 20 years, she's still going to be that person standing there.
Yeah.
That's actually a really ingenious
That's
idea.
actually-
And again, another parallel to Psycho.
Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually not actually a pretty good idea. Yeah, because, like, we do find out, Jason, I guess, has just been living out in the woods for like, the last 20 years. But that could also kind of solve that thing of, like, she's been taking, like, she's been, like, taking care of him and stuff, too. Like, that actually...
I always thought it like that she was living out there with him.
Yeah,
Because in the second one, there's a pretty wide trail going down to that, and the Jeeps, and here I go with the car thing again, but that Jeep is a CJ5, which means it has a really narrow wheelbase, like some of the modern compact cars. It's got that kind of width to it. So getting down through those trees, she could easily have been living in that shack with him.
That makes a lot of sense, especially that's kind of how he could have survived in the woods in part 2.
Yeah,
People are always given.
I never thought of it. I always just chalked it like, Jason's just been chilling out in the woods and somehow learned his survival and foraging skills. But no, that actually makes a lot of sense that she's been out there kind of with them, and like she thought he died, killed the cockroach, and kind of went into a bit of a psychosis, and then found out he was alive again, but kind of just rolled with it like, no, her boy's dead, but she's still angry over the camp at what she did. Yeah, that actually is a good idea.
Yeah,
Well, he's grown now, so her baby is gone.
Right. Yeah.
There was an article a few years back, and I read it because it was linked to something, and I think it was linked to Split, about people with the fractured personalities, whatever the current name for it is. But it was a woman who had raised a child who was deaf. And the child, as it grew, every time it would speak, it would sign. So, or it couldn't speak, it would sign. So the mother became, when it was little, she would speak in that child's voice to tell whoever what they were signing for. And as the child got older, she kept doing that. when it got to be 18, 19, whatever, and went away to college, well, empty nest syndrome, single mother, raising a child with special needs, her personality fractured, and she would literally still talk as that child. She literally saw her 8-year-old, 10-year-old, whatever, was still at home with her while her other kid was off at college, except it was the same kid. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things that kind of put this theory in my head about what if she's taken on the personality of baby Jason, and she's roommates and possibly whatever else is screwed up as they are with the adult version of it. She still sees him in her head, and he still lives in her head as a personality.
I hope they do something like this in the show.
Yeah, that would be a really interesting direction to go with, like, the TV show that's supposed to come out sometime next year. That would actually be a really interesting idea to explore, and would fix a lot of, like, continuity and plot holes that people have pointed out with the franchise over the years. That would actually fix a lot of problems. That makes a lot of sense. That's a really good theory.
It is.
Yeah, it's way too smart for them to do it on TV.
Probably, yes.
I don't know, sometimes they get it right.
Well, sometimes, but yeah, probably it's just going to be the most basic standard kind of storyline is what I'm kind of predicting. But that would be a really interesting direction to see them go into if they do.
Yeah. It would. Great theory.
That's just one of those things that this is, like I said, I think it was split. It might have been something before that, but it was something where it was a fractured personality, and this was a real case. This is what, really happened to this poor woman. So it just kind of clicked in my head of what if that was what happened to her.
It makes sense. It fixes, like you said, it fixes a lot of problems that people pointed out, and it still is true to the story. It's a good theory. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't know anything about that in 1980, in 1981.
But this is all retrospectively looking back and trying to fix these issues of movies written by people who are like, sure, he's alive again, but you can't. However, Betsy Palmer's not coming back to cut her head off. They're like, and Jason's alive now. Where was he? Living in the woods.
Yeah.
Questions.
Shut up and eat your popcorn.
Retrospectively doing that, but no, that's actually a pretty good way to fix the problems like the early films.
Yeah, I agree.
So you get to the end of this one, and you get to the decapitation. God, that looked so good back in its day.
It did.
And if you watch it in low resolution, it still looks damn good.
It does.
But
if you watch it in 4K, you can see the toothpicks and the hairy knuckles.
Yes,
you brought that up.
Yeah,
this is the first time we watched it in good quality, isn't it?
We watched my Blu-ray set of it, and I pulled, and this is the first time in these a very long time where we were watching, I was taking notes and stuff, and I was like, looking at it, I was like, wait a second, rewind that a second, look at those hands. Betsy Palmer's hands magically grew like 2 sizes and got real hairy.
Yep.
Look a bit like Tom Savini's hand.
For its day, you have to love that effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I watch it like on I have 2 monitors on the computer, and I watch most of my stuff there. If I watch it on the little monitor, it still kind of holds up. If I watch it in 4K on the big monitor, not so much.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is definitely kind of falls into. I feel like that way with a lot of like the early slasher movies and stuff. Halloween kind of is an exception to it, but like I feel like a lot of slasher movies of this era and a lot of like grindhouse films are kind of enhanced by watching them in like shittier quality. Like I love watching like Chainsaw and like the greatest like 4K beautiful restoration stuff. But goddamn it, there's something really nice and fitting about watching that movie on like a beat up, dirty VHS tape. Also,
yeah. there's a charm, and then like for me and Moon, it's nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much for you, but
yes, it adds to the aesthetic and the vibe that the movie's really going for. Like, well, sometimes it's nice to have these movies like restored in like the greatest quality they'll ever be. But there is also like something kind of nice to watching some of these movies in the quality that they were probably best intended for, in kind of shitty low res quality on the CRT.
Yeah, exactly.
Or projected on a gigantic screen at a drive-in.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You know, but I mean, you can't fault it. They did the best they could with the budget that they had and the technology of the day.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it takes me out of it a little bit, but it's okay because it's my movie. You know, it's one of those things. But
I get that. And we all, like you said, we all have movies like that, and that's great to be celebrated and to hold dear. And don't listen just because it's not everyone's jam. Doesn't lessen it being your jam.
It also sometimes it kind of shows a mark of qualities, or at least something, a reason to come back to kind of notice those little things like that in different qualities and stuff. Notice these little things. Like, it's a big reason why Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite movies. It's like I love rewatching that movie because I always notice something like kind of different every single time. Like I remember being like watching it for like the 15th or 16th time, like noticing, like, wait a second, you can see the rafters for the gymnasium they were filming in a lot of shots of that, in a lot of scenes of that movie and stuff. So like that's like I love noticing little things. Is it like take you out of the movie maybe? Sure, but like it kind of also adds like it's cool to see those little touches and little things that you may have never noticed before. It kind of rewards you. The movie unintentionally rewards you with rewatching it.
Yeah, it really does. And like you've seen it all this time, so anything that brings it new kind of gives you a fresh perspective and experience to it.
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't really. This is not, in the movies of this era and movies that I've grown up with, are not movies that I necessarily need to be heavily immersed in anymore.
Yeah.
I'm watching them for the nostalgia. I'm watching them for, you know, sometimes just sound in the background. And this is for me a good movie for that. I was editing something a while back, and it's like I turned it on the other monitor, on the little monitor, so that I had some kind of noise going on while I was messing around with stuff and doing the sound files and things like that, because I can completely tune it out to hear what I'm doing with the sounds, but I can also have it on as background noise, and for me, I know exactly what's going on by the sound cues. And that's another thing with this movie is the score on it.
Yes.
I'm not normally one who pays much attention to that. I'm not normally one who pays a whole lot of attention to cinematography kind of thing. I'm much more here for the entertainment factor than to be impressed with that sort of stuff. But I think, and again, somebody's going to be pissed off at this, but I think Harry Manfredini with the soundtrack and score to this one took John Carpenter's idea of the simplistic, simple, boiled down to the bare basics, and took it up just enough that for me it's an improvement on it. It really sets more of a tone. And if you slow it down in some of the slower scenes, it works as background music. If you pick it up in some of the stalking scenes, it works as a stalking theme. Unlike Carpenter's, that kind of only works as a stalking theme for me.
You are going to piss some people off with that.
I'll piss them off even more. I agree. I 100% agree with you, actually. I think overall the Manfredini score is in a lot of ways more interesting and kind of fits the movie way more than a lot of Carpenter's pieces for the original Halloween. Like, it works really great as like incidental stalking themes and like background music, or like a random disco remix or something for part 3. All of these can work. But it also has like a little bit of added layers to it. Like, I'm sure anyone who's familiar with the movie knows this, but like Manfredini, when he was doing it with like that little added, but purposely did to be like, okay, Like he's trying to add in like the killer bar, like that's too, like this is all stuff in Pamela's head, and that's her Jason's voice telling her to kill them and stuff. Like that little added thing gives it a lot more of a presence and kind of a personality, as weird as it's to say about a score, than something like Carpenter's score for the original Halloween, which is a very good and iconic score. But I do feel like it does sort of fade into the background and is best used for like stalking scenes and everywhere else. It does feel a little bit out of place. But I've also always said the Halloween score is one of Carpenter's weakest scores, so that is another reason to be pissed off at me. But yeah.
I get that. I enjoy this score a lot. I do. I'm not going to go to y'all's level because I'm more sensitive. I can't handle that kind of hate.
You can't take the truth.
I can't. But I appreciate both of them. I appreciate both of them. But I do think that this one is very underrated.
It's underappreciated.
Yes.
It's a very versatile score overall, I feel.
I agree.
And yeah, the disco remix is awesome too.
I love the disco remix. I legit always have that on my Halloween playlist. I love the disco remix from Part 3.
It is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And the later versions of it in the where it's kind of a bit more of a rock theme to it. It works that way too. The original is still always going to be my favorite, but you can use it again in other places and do different things with it. And I just can't see remixing the Halloween theme and it coming out.
It's good.
Me either. Yeah, me either. Because and we even see that in the Gordon Green Blumhouse trilogy, where Carpenter kind of tweaks it a little bit, but it still just sounds like the Michael Myers stalking music from the 1970s. It always kind of, you never can escape that original thing. Whereas the prior score has always been a little bit more versatile and can do a lot of different things.
Well, look what Alice Cooper did with it.
That too, yeah.
Yeah. Very true. Plus, it inspired the one from Elm Street, and I think that one's really good too.
I absolutely agree with that one, yeah.
I think that one's actually the creepiest of them. This is my favorite, but I think that slightly mistuned piano and the intentionally off-kilter notes is the creepiest of them.
The Elm Street one's my favorite if we're talking just the original iterations of these themes. Elm Street I feel has always been the strongest.
I get that.
And creepiest.
It is one of the more creepy ones. I don't know which one's mine.
You never really thought, have you?
I've never really thought, but I'm going to do some thinking. When you guys are talking this, I'm hearing another Carpenter from Escape from New York.
Yeah,
that's probably one of my favorites.
Yes.
Fucking love that one.
Yeah.
I agree. I love that one. Sean's crying right now.
Absolutely. Like I said, I feel like Halloween might be the weakest John Carpenter score from his.
Don't make Moon get dislikes.
Fine, go dislike our channel.
It's okay. It's interaction. It all works the same for me.
Oh, you're right. Exactly.
Y'all can give it every thumbs down you want to. Don't hurt my feelings.
Oh, yeah.
It does surprise me. It actually surprises me because I get so little interaction anyway. Blah. But so when I do get one, it's like, well, what the hell? And then it's like, oh wait, I criticized Halloween.
It almost probably 99% of the time that's what it is.
I know that's a couple of times we've done. It's like, wait, what happened? All right, I made a joke at the Halloween fandom. It got expensive something, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to the Halloween. It's just
I play it up for jokes and stuff. But you like Halloween, totally cool. Like what you want to like. It doesn't matter to me as long as you're not being an asshole about it. Fucking right on.
Yeah.
I mean, I like 1, 2, and 4. The rest of them not as much. But I do enjoy those. It's just they're not my favorites. And again, I was late and had a bit of a bias when I got there. So. But anyway, you get the ending of this one where Alice has been attacked from all sides so much that she decides to paddle out to the middle of the lake in a canoe.
For some reason.
You brought up an interesting thing. This is what she does.
This is her immediate response. She cuts off some psycho woman's head, and she's immediately to the canoe. And oh wait, the paddle got cut. It's a little weird. It's always weirded me yeah, like I've honestly always sort of wondered if, like, maybe as soon as she cuts off her head, Alice instantly like passes out from the shock of doing it, and like that's when the dream sequence starts, and the canoe thing was a part of the dream or something. But like, it's a weird choice. It's a really weird choice.
But it's good for what's about to come up.
Yeah.
Yep. The infamous final scene, the jump. Well, not exactly final, but the jump scare at the end.
Yeah.
Pure Carrie ripoff, but.
Sure.
But honestly, I think it was done better.
Me too. That's low-key always bugged me in the original Carrie. It always felt really cheap and weird. This one, it makes way more sense, honestly.
I get that. Although it scared a lot of people. I know Stephen King tells a famous story of he was in behind.
Yeah, no hate to people who are into the Carrie series. It's a good thing. That's a good movie. But I always felt like it was a little jarring. That, like, that's how we close that film out with like a random cheap jump scares. This one, it makes more sense. It feels more appropriate because like Carrie. Not to decry this film at all, but Carrie always, maybe just due to the Palma, I always felt like it was trying to be a little bit more like a highbrow film, whereas this one, yeah, it's definitely a little bit more like, this was a haunted house. This was a throw-wide or a Halloween haunted house kind of attraction, whereas Carrie always had a little bit more like a highbrow put onto it, due probably due to the Palma's directing.
Yeah,
and it feels a lot more appropriate. Like, yeah, of course we're going to close out this like little haunted house attraction with a big random jump scare of someone popping out and getting you. Of course we're going to do that. It makes sense.
I love that popping out though.
It's great.
Yep, and the stinger cue to the music is great for that one. It's
Yes.
This one does it. It's funny to say this, but this one does it so well. And so many others, it's a simple thing to put an ending jump scare in, and so many others telegraph it so bad that it's just like, you know, you're sitting there going, okay, let's get this over with. Come on. You know, and this one still gets people. I watch quite a few reactor channels, and I love watching this one for that thing because, you know, if there's something in their hands thinking that it's over and we're down to the pretty music and, you know, how many things get thrown across people's rooms, how many people come out of their chairs. It's great to see that is still getting people.
Yeah.
And it shows that, I mean, for all the shit we give it does say something testament to the film.
Absolutely. Like, all my issues aside with this film, I can still acknowledge, like, no, there's still a lot of great stuff in this film.
Oh, yeah.
It's very rough around the edges, and it's not a part of the franchise I really am ever actively wanting to revisit very frequently. But there is definitely one I have a lot of respect for it, and I do have a lot of appreciation for it that I can definitely send to it. And for anyone like Moon or like, say, Sean Erskine, who like this is one of their favorite, if not their favorite entry in the franchise, I always can totally understand and see what people are seeing in it. It might not necessarily be to my specific taste for the Friday franchise, but totally, yeah, absolutely, to each their own, and I can totally see why someone this would be their favorite.
Yeah, I agree.
Alright, so I think that's kind of everything I had on this one. If there's something else you guys wanted to bring up?
Good, you?
I just want to give one more shout out to Kevin Bacon's penis.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon. The sizzling bacon dog.
Yeah. I mean, that makes
you want some sausage with your bacon? That's a little too much beef, but you know.
No, not for me.
Yeah, there you go.
And don't forget, it comes with a side of eggs.
They could fertilize them, you know.
God damn it.
Alright, so I want to thank my guests tonight for joining me. I always love working with you guys. So much fun. For those listening on the podcast, Jen and Christian have a channel on YouTube. It's called Jen's Reviews from the Grave. And why don't you let everybody know what you're doing the next little bit?
Well, if you're listening to this right when it's dropping, it's about to be, or it's just barely starting to be, spooky season, and that's a little time of year where we like to really go all out. So we are doing our annual 31 Days of Halloween, where we review 31 different horror films over 31 days of October. This year's theme is Grab Bag Year 2, because we had got a lot more elaborate plans. We're going to do like theme weeks and like cannibal films, killer kids films, and all that kind of fun stuff. But life this year really is not let that be a thing. We did not have time to. So we're just doing Grab Bag again. It's just a bunch of just 31 random movies that have no connecting thing other than we wanted to talk about them.
Some of them are older movies, some of them are going to be current. You just never know which. We're like a box of chocolates. You ain't never know which will get.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be good if you're interested in that or just our chaotic energy and antics. Check it out.
All right.
I talk a lot about penises.
There's a lot of movies coming from this woman.
All right, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much to everyone for listening in. So we're going to end the show here, and as always, y'all be good, y'all be safe, and y'all have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.